Hello, everyone, and welcome. Some people have a difficult time believing in God because they think that God is somehow very, very distant from the world, that God does not interact in the world in a powerful way to help us. God is somehow living up there in the sky and has very little to do with us. This is not the kind of God that we believe in as Christians, and today's gospel makes this clear. In today's gospel, Jesus reminds us that we, God's people, are the way in which God shows his love and care for the world. We are the instruments through which God shows his kindness and love for all people. In the gospel today, Jesus uses this image of a vineyard. We are God's vineyard, the way that God produces good fruit in the world. Perhaps you've heard this story before that kind of illustrates how God works in the world. There was once this flood in this village, and as the water was rising higher, a man sought refuge on the roof of his house. And as the flood waters rose up, he prayed to God, "God, please save me." And soon a rowboat came in front of his house and said, "Jump down, come down into this rowboat, and we will bring you to safety." And the man said, "No, thank you, I've prayed to God. I trust that God will save me." The waters continued to rise. The man continued to pray to God. And then shortly thereafterwards, a motorboat came by and said, "Come down into this boat. We'll bring you to safety. We'll save your life." And the man said, "No, thank you. I trust that God will help me. I've prayed to him. He will save me." Finally, the waters rose even higher, and a helicopter from search and rescue came by and dropped a rope ladder down to the man and said, "Grab hold. We'll save your life. We'll bring you to safety." And the man said, "Thank you, but I'm waiting for God to save me. I prayed, and I trust that he will rescue me." Finally, the waters came over the man, and he drowned, and he came before God and said, "God, what happened? I prayed that you would save me. Where were you?" And God told the man, "I sent a rowboat, I sent a motorboat, and I sent a helicopter to save you. What else do you expect me to do?" We, God's people, are the way that God shows his love and care for the world. This is the message of the gospel, and this is a great gift for us. But along with this gift comes a great responsibility. Because we are God's vineyard, God expects us to bear great fruit. And Jesus in the gospel today gives us a very kind of stark warning or wake-up call. He comes to us today as a prophet and reminds us that because we are God's vineyard, God expects us to bear good fruit. Otherwise, he might give this vineyard to another people. It's an encouragement for us to remember that we must bear good fruit. With this gift of being God's vineyard comes a great responsibility. One way that we can bear good fruit in the world today is by bringing or working to bring a greater unity and fraternity among all people. Today we celebrate the feast day of St. Francis of Assisi. Now, St. Francis is probably one of the most popular saints in the church, but is also one of the most popular saints for all people, regardless of religion. St. Francis of Assisi lived in a time of great turmoil, a time of great violence, religious conflicts, political conflicts, and in the midst of this, St. Francis of Assisi preached a message of fraternity among all people. St. Francis of Assisi saw in all people, especially the poor, the marginalized, and people who others saw as enemies, he saw in them the image of Christ and went out to love them, to create bonds of friendship between them and all people. Today, Pope Francis has signed a new encyclical letter, has promulgated a new encyclical letter called Fratelli Tutti. And in this encyclical, Pope Francis carries up this call or inspiration of Saint Francis. Pope Francis recognizes that in the world today, we too are experiencing many divisions among people, polarization, a growing gap between the rich and the poor. And Pope Francis, following this inspiration from Saint Francis, calls us to work to create a greater sense of fraternity, love, and unity among all people, to encounter others, especially those who we might see as enemies, as being our neighbors, as being created in God's image. We are called to see the image of Christ in them and to love them and to create bonds of friendship with them. So as we enter this week, we can take up this challenge. We are called to be God's vineyard. We are called to produce good fruits in the world. Let us do this by reaching out to all people as our brothers and sisters and showing them love and kindness. God bless you and take care.